So let's do this. Let's get to our power rankings. And with the injury of Kevin Winston Jr., let's get to that. Joe, here's my power rankings going into week 4. I'll read them off. Georgia at number 1, Texas number 2, Ohio State number 3, Miami, the Hurricanes coming in at number 4. Tennessee has a big week. They could shoot up this board with a win this week versus Oklahoma. Number 6, Alabama. Number 7, Ole Miss. Number 8, Oregon. Number 9, USC. Number 10, Missouri. Joe, if you don't mind reading off your list to us as well.
Yes, sir. Number 1, Georgia. Number 2, Texas. Number 3, Ohio State. Number 4, Tennessee. Number 5, Alabama. Number 6, Miami. 7, Ole Miss. 8, USC. 9, Missouri. 10, Oregon.
So Penn State is not in yours and neither in mine. So I guess we were both wrong on that. We both put out Penn State. Let's talk about this. So Penn State's not in our top 10 power rankings. Kevin Winston Jr. is out. That's a big deal. Their star safety. Look, man, I can't get out of my mind, and we talked about this like pretty much reactionary after it happened. I can't get out of my mind that Bowling Green just ran up and down the field on him. Now that Winston Jr. is out, Joe, this Penn State could be in a little bit of trouble here.
Yeah, so Winston Jr., for those who don't know who he is, big, long safety. He's a guy who covers a lot of tight ends for them in that scheme, but he's a really downhill tackler. So you're talking about how Bowling Green ran all over him. He is that second-level defender that is just a really strong, short tackler that you're going to need. And what I was saying, too, before we jumped into this segment, I had talked about a lot this offseason that I'm worried about the secondary replacing all those corners, but you're able to lean on your safeties because your safeties are one of your strongest position groups. Without Kevin Winston Jr., who is good enough to be a top 75, top 50 pick in the upcoming draft, that's a significant loss. That's a huge, huge loss. There's a lot of turnover on that Penn State roster. And when you have to square up with Ohio State and when you have to play USC, not having him is going to show up. I have him at like 11, 12. I know we don't rank past that, but like they're one of those like first out teams for me. I'd be on fraud watch is an aggressive way to phrase it, but I'd be on like loss watch. Let's put it that way. Their first big matchup, them losing it.
Problem is, Joe, there's a strong likelihood that they're still going to be 10-2, 11-1.
Right. That's true.
And so when we talk about these power rankings, I just don't think that they're better than any of these 10 teams. And I was high on Penn State coming into the season. Look, I agree with you. It's a big loss. I think they still got to figure some things out offensively, right? I think that they just look I don't want to say disjointed, but they look a little clunky at times. And so for me with Penn State, even though I love Drew Aller, I think that they're going to get some things rolling. Right now, they seem to be not where I thought they'd be offensively going into the season. Where do you want to start this off at? I know we talked about Ohio State, but where do you want to start off at? What team?
Let's throw yours back up really quick. I just want to get another eye on that. I want to talk about, let's start with Georgia, because I think that this is where you and I agree very rarely, where we're against the public. A lot of people, and this is because they're the new Bama. They are the new pinnacle of college football. We glaze the shit out of them on this show. There is no working around that. I will be open and say that we hype them up a ton because they're such a consistently good football program and they dominate on the field. And because of that, I think a lot of outsiders are quick to judge and are quick to jump to conclusions the minute that they falter just a little bit. They're looking for an opportunity to say, oh, they looked like crap against Kentucky. We got to move them down. If we're going to move them down, have somebody who's viably and clearly the best team on paper and on the field. They wiped Clemson, which is a better team than Michigan. They struggled with Kentucky in Lexington, which they historically do not play well in that setting at Kentucky. They also have occasional dud games. Texas better not have a dud game. That's all I'm saying. We were jumping to so many conclusions. They've got a backup quarterback in. They just beat UTSA. Why are we moving a team back because they played poorly? It feels like we're rewarding Texas for beating up on Michigan and then beating UTSA.
Here's the thing. Rankings and ratings are always different. From a power rankings standpoint, just pure rankings.
Right.
I cannot see how you do that. Now, power ratings, I can, because look, here's the truth. You did go on the road. You lost to a team that hasn't scored a touchdown in 2 weeks. I'm not moving them, okay, because I think that they're still one of the best teams in the country. I think in 2 weeks or less than 2 weeks now, they're going to go into Alabama. I think that they're going to win that football game. But the bottom line for me, I think they're going to win that football game. The bottom line, we'll talk about that. Let's not get there here.
Let's talk about that in a second because it's actually a really good talking point.
Okay. Well, they hadn't played yet. So
yeah, I know. Finish what you're saying, though.
Joe, they've won 45 of the last 46 regular season football games. Regardless of what it's looked like, they have been that stellar. They have been that good. So when we're talking about ratings, here's the thing that I see with the AP poll, putting Texas at number 1 that I have a massive issue with. Their starting quarterback is out. Yeah, they have Arch Manning. That's a massive plus. What happens if Arch Manning has got to face teams like Georgia?
Or wait, here's a better question. What if Arch Manning goes down before Quinn's back? Like going to a backup quarterback is very sketchy.
Because Quinn Ewers, for what it's worth, has never been healthy. And you're talking about what should be a reigning defending national champion. I mean, look, man, Georgia got hosed last year. They should have been in the playoff. I'm not going to say above Bama, but maybe above Texas. I don't know. They should have been in the playoff no matter what, because look, we all know that they were one of the top 4 teams going into or at the end of last year. I'm just not going to move a team that's been that excellent. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
Do I think now? Here's the thing, because we both have Texas at number 2. Do I think that Texas is? Look, man, they're a team. They look different than everybody. They look like Georgia in a lot of ways. They look like old Alabama teams. They're a very well put together team. I do think that they still may have an issue running the football, okay? And we both have them at number 2. But my whole thing with Texas is, Joe, they went up against Michigan, who, by the way, couldn't move the football and never could break away. They didn't have a running back that had over 3 yards a carry. So they beat Michigan in Ann Arbor. Yeah, that's a great deal. Good for you. That's a big win. I'm not taking anything away from that. They couldn't move the football. You had, I think, 14, 15 possessions. What are we talking about here?
Well, wait, are you saying Texas couldn't move the football?
Texas couldn't run the football effectively. Okay, like when you look at them, Joe, if I come to you and say, Joe, there's going to be a team that has 14 possessions and not one running back gets over 3 yards a carry. By the way, they're going to have over 30 carries with their running backs. What would you say? Go and look it up, because it's right here in the handy-dandy notebook.
I'm just double checking, because that almost – I'm not doubting you, but that sounds –
It's what happened.
Yeah, you're right. Didn't go over 4 yards per carry is what you mean.
What did I say,
Jarrett Gibson was 3. These are all still bad numbers. Jarrett Gibson was 3.6. Windsor was 3.8. Jaden Blue was 2.4. You bring up a good point. And that was what popped in my head too. For dinging one team for dealing with some injuries and trying to get back from them. First of all, it's good that Georgia is dealing with these injuries now. Texas? Right. Texas has a critical injury issue at running back, and they're on their 3rd running back that they're kind of turning to. So, look, here's actually real truth here, and Elks is going to love this statement. After the Alabama game, if they lose to Alabama, Ohio State's number 1 for me. It's not Texas. I feel like Ohio State, if there is a world where Georgia has a loss and they slip up, Ohio State's going to overtake and going to be the number 1 team. It's not going to be Texas. This is this early season hype thing that we always do with Texas. I'm not down. I think they're going to be in the SEC championship game. They're going to be a playoff team. But it's this early season hype thing that whenever there's just a little bit, we latch on. And I know a lot of college football folks are from the state of Texas or neighboring states, and they want to root for them. That's great. Them being good makes our conversations on this show better, because the Texas fans, they're aggressive. They love to support their team. But to put them at number 1 just feels extremely reactionary and way too abrupt and way too soon.
Now, I know what Texas fans' argument is going to be. It's going to be what Georgia did a week ago, okay, in reference to running the football against Kentucky. But here's the thing, the problem that I have with Texas. You've played one Power 4 opponent. And whatever you want to say about what
Georgia's played 2.
Well, no.
I'm agreeing with you. No, I'm agreeing with you. Like,
Okay.
Georgia has played a conference rival, and they played.
Texas has played nothing like Clemson. There, I said it. Because Clemson can actually move the football. Ironically, as enough,
Just
if you're
not much better, but like a little bit better.
Joe, you know that Clemson.
Let's not turn Clemson into a juggernaut all of a sudden. They're pretty mediocre.
Warren, Joe, what if
they're better than Michigan? I agree, but like,
all right, so,
not by much.
But by the way, they blanked them. They blanked them. By the way, their lead running back wasn't out or wasn't there. So all these people wanting to like poo-poo on Georgia. All right, man. Okay. Like, y'all have not learned y'all's lesson if y'all want to continue to do that. And by the way, I know who votes in the AP. I know who votes in the AP in the Southeast. I can't have conversations with them because I know that they're dumb. I'm serious.
I've got a multi-part next point that I want to get to. So, okay, I moved Alabama up to 5 because I was so impressed with their game against Wisconsin. You have them at 6, so like we're in similar striking distance. So the first question I have here before we talk about where Alabama fits at the current moment. Say Alabama beats Georgia. I actually wouldn't be afraid to put them at number 1. Would that win be the most impressive win that we've seen any team have this entire season? I would argue Alabama beating Georgia would be the most impressive. And that, to me, actually, now that I think about it, I regret making that Ohio State statement. I think I would move up Alabama to number 1 if they beat Georgia.
Of course you would. But here's the thing. All these teams in 1 through 6 have a compelling argument. Like, for example, I think I could come out here and make a very compelling argument for Miami. Now,
actually, I want to get to that in a bit. I still love Miami, but that Florida win starts to look weaker and weaker the worse that they play.
It's not about who they beat for them.
I know.
It's about how they are accomplishing. And by the way, they're only getting better, meaning their cohesiveness offensively is getting better. But I said Miami because everybody's going to say, well, what about Miami? They didn't play anybody. Well, neither has Ohio State. And you're projecting talent at that point if you're talking about Ohio State. Look, here's where I am with Alabama. Do I think that they're one of the most explosive teams in the country? Yes, I do. Here's the issue that I have going in, and this is 2 weeks going out here. The issue I have is that I have not seen them and Jalen Milroe at the current moment under DeBoer be able to consistently hit intermediate passes. Okay, they are dead last in the SEC in intermediate passing completion. They're dead last in the SEC in attempts. Everything that they're doing is throwing the ball 15 yards or deeper. Did you know that? Joe Clack came out with that stat today.
Yeah, but
wait,
one second. That stat is only concerning in the context of if you're not connecting on deep shots. They're connecting on deep shots at a ridiculous rate.
That's fine. You going to do that against Georgia?
I think that they had success in the SEC championship game.
It's a different team and a different game. You think you think that Malachi Starks hasn't gotten better? And
I think that he has, but Kamari Lassiter's gone. There's younger guys that are stepping up now in that secondary.
Here's another thing that I'm worried about Bama too. We have not seen that secondary stressed at all. It's not missed on me that every single time that Kalen DeBoer took the podium in fall camp, every time when he took the podium in SEC Media Days, the biggest concern that he had was his secondary. So, again,
I completely disagree with your thoughts on their secondary because I broke down the Wisconsin film.
It's not my opinion when he's running out there saying
I know, but we're 3 games in and we have film and I've watched these guys and I think that they looked really good. It was
attack that they faced.
Okay. I can still evaluate talent when they're going up against bad. They're still playing a Big Ten team. They're not playing FCS West.
Joe, the best passing attack that they have faced is South Florida.
I don't agree. I mean, I would say that Wisconsin's is a little bit better than South Florida's.
Their starting quarterback went out.
Okay. I think that you're jumping to a conclusion a little bit too quickly on that second. I'm not saying that they're the best secondary in college football, but I think that the secondary is going to be a lot better than people realize. Damani Jackson looked great against Wisconsin.
Against whom?
Against Wisconsin.
Okay.
Nobody's played anybody. We don't have any real evidence. Nobody has actually played a good team yet.
USC and LSU didn't play.
Well,
Georgia.
That's the only team. Well, I would argue that. I mean,
Notre
LSU's
Dame,
good.
No, you're right. You're right. You know what? You're right. Notre Dame did. The Notre Dame win at A&M means nothing.
No, hold on.
No,
No,
you're right.
That's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is that nobody here has played another top 10 team. Everybody has played back end of the top.
You have USC in your top 10. LSU did.
Yeah, LSU lost. I'm saying the top 10 teams, none of those top 10 teams have played another top 10 team.
Joe, of all of these teams, do you really think?
Why are you arguing with me over the fact that I'm just saying that like the schedule has been light for everybody? That's all I'm trying to say.
For everybody, but what I'm seeing from people about Alabama, oh, here comes Kalen DeBoer. All right, watch Kirby gonna line up and bust that ass too.
You will. I'm ready to pick Alabama. I think I'm picking Alabama next week.
Do it.
Give me Alabama against a banged up Georgia team. I think that they're going to beat them. And I'm moving them up to number 1. I will gladly and quickly move them up to number 1. This is exactly what they needed. Yeah, go ahead. Let's talk about
Ohio State.
Yeah.
All right. Joe, I know what everybody's going to say about Ohio State. They hadn't played anybody. I'm not – look, here's where I am with Ohio State. Do I hate that they play a soft-ass schedule? Yes. Because I hear constantly from people in the Big Ten, you don't have 9 conference games. Okay, like meaning the SEC doesn't. You're playing Dookie Water, Rudy Putek, and Ash Cheek State. I don't know what to make of them. I really do. I think that they have more talent than anybody in the country, or one of the teams that have one of the most talent in the country. Yes, but I don't know how to evaluate it when you're playing Ash Cheek State.
Yeah, this is gonna be Ohio State's case that we had last year with Michigan, and we're gonna be grappling with moving them back on a week-to-week basis. I stick with, and it kind of goes with my Georgia logic. Unless you show me a reason to drop you, I'm not going to. I don't even know when they have like their first big matchup. I think it's not for a while. I don't think that they face anybody until some point in October. So we're really not going to have an answer to that question. I'll tell you what, though, what's promising is Jeremiah Smith continues to look really good, and I think that passing attack's really good.
What have you okay, well, I'm glad you said that. Let me ask you the God's honest question. What are your thoughts on Will Howard?
I feel like it's hard to like really, truly evaluate him because, look, the reason why I'm hyped up on Alabama, they played a Big Ten team at least. You know, like they looked on a completely different level against a team that not a lot of people, but a very small amount of people were saying like, hey, watch out for Wisconsin this year. Maybe they're a sneaky playoff team. Ohio State has not played anyone at all. The quarterback position especially needs to be tested by a good defensive line, a good secondary. There hasn't been anything there. I think for who he's played against, I think he's made me feel comfortable that they're not going to lose a step.
Look, I think they have Iowa before they play Oregon. I think that's going to be a good little test before they go into Oregon, who, by the way, is back in our top 10 after they vindicated themselves against Oregon State. Joe, let me throw this team out there to you because they have a big game before we move on here. They have a big game this week. What if Tennessee goes into Norman and takes care of business? What are we prepared to do with them?
I might leapfrog Ohio State. I might move them up to 3. I think I would feel pretty comfortable moving them up to 3. I mean, it all comes to
deserve to be there above Miami. I think that's where I was going to go.
And if I'm correct, I believe that was where I had them ahead of Miami currently because I've seen more from them. Not only did they beat a ACC opponent, but they also have literally brutally murdered every single team that they've played. It's comical, the stat lines that they've had. If they dominate Oklahoma, I'm definitely moving them up to 3, and I'm going to leave them there pretty confidently.
Boy,
if it's
Nick
close,
in the chat, boy. I'm going to throw that.
Who's mad at us?
Nick, because we said Oregon's back in the top 10. We both had him out last week.
Yeah. Well, okay. I get now he's saying that Oklahoma sucks. It's still a win against an SEC opponent. it is a reputable win. I don't know if I'm moving them up to 3 if the game's within a touchdown. I think I might keep them where I have them. But if they kick the crap out of them, they win by 10+ points, I'm moving them up to 3.
I think with Joe, here's the problem that I have with points. I think it's going to go based off of how this game feels for me more than anything. Let me explain. You have a very prideful university going into a new conference who has won numerous national championships. They're going to want to go out here and make a point. You have a guy that was a Heisman Trophy finalist, a guy that was a quarterback for your last national title who's now coaching Tennessee coming in here. Joe, I think this is the premier matchup of the weekend without even remote question.
Yeah.
And I think that this comes more for feel to me. Like that 7 points might feel a little bit weighted different, right? Like, for example, Joe, like in the second half, LSU, I'm just going to throw this out there, outgained this game because it was the premier matchup last week. They outgained South Carolina 327 yards to 17. Like, feel more than actual things that are happening on the field. I'll give another example. Missouri beating Boston College by 6. That game was a little bit, in the second half, a little bit different than what the final score indicated. What I would say here with Tennessee is I think they're going in with a young quarterback in a hostile environment, and I think that what they have done is they've played more Power 5 or just as many Power 4 opponents than anybody. If they take care of business against both, I'm really going to be surprised, or not surprised. I'm really going to be good or feeling good about Tennessee. Look, what teams do you want to get here? I mean, USC's got a big matchup. Missouri, we got Oregon on here and Ole Miss. Is there anybody you want to get to before we move on?
To bring up USC, I've got them at 8. You've got them at 9. I know what a shocker the Notre Dame fans got USC higher than Blake has them, and your team played them. I don't think I'm going to move them.
I mean, they had a bye week, Joe. I mean,
I know. I'm not. That's not a dig at you. I'm saying I'm pointing out the irony. I'm just like it's more of a dig at myself because I'm a coward and I can't stick to hating on USC. I have to show them a little bit of love when they're playing well. To this point though, about this Michigan game, I feel we talked about this in the preview. They've been very, very dominant thus far. Against Utah State, they completely smoked them, and then they got that really good win against LSU, and we were kind of reminded of what they can be if they're balanced on both sides of the football. I don't think I'm going to move them up, though, if they beat Michigan, because then at that point, Michigan's just going to be the hapless team that can only run the football and can't throw it, and then it's kind of just like a nice win.
Then why do we have Texas at 2?
Well, that plays into what we've talked about with some of these other teams that should potentially leapfrog Texas. This is all a very good conversation of why I think it's extremely reactive for the AP poll to have moved up and for anybody to move Texas to number 1. That win was strong. It's a momentum builder. But if Michigan continues to lose these top-ranked games, it's not as impressive as you thought it was.
I fully agree with you there. Here's the thing. If USC goes in Ann Arbor and then has another really good defensive performance like they did against LSU and Utah State, Joe, I'm going to be real with you. I'm going to move them up pretty high because here's the thing that I know. I know that Lincoln can scheme up offense, and now they don't have to press offensively because they know that they can get stops defensively. I told you this in the preseason in our lead up to LSU, the LSU game, and I'm going to say it again now. Brother, they got pieces on defense. They got athletes. I think that they were put in such bad schematical situations a year ago that it hurt them so bad. Look, I'm going to continue to say this too. I don't know where I would rank their defensive line in the country. They're definitely top 10. Jahol Muhammad, Anthony Lucas, Bear Alexander, Joe, those are all top 100 guys that were coming out of high school. That D-line is ferocious. By the way, they might have one of the best Big Ten linebackers in the country in Arnold. Their front 7 is really good. I want to see a team that has more experience in a passing game outside of a guy like Nussmeier who could really force them the ball down the field to see what they really look like. I think that an Ohio State would really be able to force them on that. But USC, man, they're more balanced than they've ever been under Lincoln. And again, I'm going to say this. Man, Lincoln took a lot of shit from a lot of people, and they put their head down and went to work and didn't say anything. I think that there are different vibes going on at USC, and I think, as Urban Meyer said today, that momentum might be a big tilt too. So, all right, anybody else? We have not talked about Ole Miss in 4 weeks.
Oh yeah, okay. Here's the thing with Ole Miss. I think this is a good last team to get to before we get to game picks. They haven't played anyone. They beat the shit out of Furman. Cool. But they're dominating their warm-up opponents to the same degree that Tennessee is. The only difference between them and Tennessee at this current moment is that Tennessee played NC State. They actually had an opportunity to compete with someone. Who does Ole Miss play this week?
Georgia Southern, if I'm not mistaken.
When do they play somebody?
Next week they got Kentucky. So their schedule, they have Georgia Southern this week, Kentucky, South Carolina, which that might be a big game for everybody there. And then they go to LSU.
Talk about a really well, and we talked about this in the preseason, and I forgot about it. Talk about like a really nice lead up for you to work through some things and get your stuff going.
They have 4 preseason games before they get to conference play.
And their first 2 conference games, Kentucky and South Carolina have been tough outs for the teams that they've faced. Those are matchups that they should win. Those are matchups that they're on in the bottom half of the conference. Yeah. They don't have to open conference play with Oklahoma like Tennessee does. Man, this goes in line with what you said. I'd understand why Tennessee would be pissed about the shorthand that they're given. And why other teams would be pissed about this handout of this wonderful welcome to the conference. But I stick with, though, what I was saying. Ole Miss has just been bludgeoning to death everybody that they've faced. It almost felt like that Wake Forest game that they kind of just casually, took their foot off the pedal. 377 passing yards for Jackson Dart almost feels pedestrian for him. That offense is firing on all cylinders, and that defense looks as dominant as we predicted it would be.
Well, think about this. This is the point. So just to give a little context of what Joe's mentioning here, I talked to a couple of SEC coaches last week, and I brought it up on the show. I'm going to bring it up here. Think about Texas, too. Joe, they have ULM this week, okay, at home. All right. Then they have Mississippi State at home. Then they got to go to Dallas, okay, for the to the Cotton Bowl to play Oklahoma. Then they got Georgia at home. Their first real true road test in the SEC, guess where it is? Vandy.
Wait, hold on. What?
You just heard what I said, correct?
Wait, I thought so that South Carolina is coming to them.
No, they're going no, we were talking about Ole Miss. Ole Miss has got to go to South Carolina.
I apologize.
What I'm saying here is Oklahoma's first SEC challenge and SEC road game or SEC game in general is at home against Tennessee. So you have two teams that are coming into the conference and they're getting pandered to. Again, the first true road environment in the SEC that Texas has to go to is at Vanderbilt.
That's insane.
It gets worse than that. You want to know their next one on the road? At
Mississippi
Arkansas.
State?
No, at Arkansas. Every single tough opponent that they will play in the SEC is at home. So you want to talk about the SEC pandering to somebody? Yeah, they're pandering to Texas, all right. They want that long money, don't care.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's why SEC coaches are pissed off. Anyway.
BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.